In Willowbell, the first chilly morning of the season always changed the town in small noticeable ways. The bakery windows fogged up sooner. The pond held a silver ribbon of mist above the water. Front porches that had been sleepy all summer suddenly looked proud of their blankets, flower pots, and little lanterns. Even the sound of footsteps changed. Everyone walked just a touch faster, as if they had remembered warm tea waiting somewhere ahead. Bramble the fox loved mornings like that. He loved the clean blue light before the market stalls opened. He loved the smell of rosemary drifting out of his tiny brick oven behind the bakery shed. He loved the way Willowbell seemed to yawn, stretch, and decide to be kind all over again. On this particular morning, Bramble was standing on a wooden crate so he could peer into his biggest soup pot. Steam curled around his whiskers. Carrots, sweet onions, tiny pearl potatoes, and garden herbs bobbed in a golden broth. Beside the pot sat a basket lined with a checkered cloth, a stack of warm breakfast rolls, and a jar of apple butter that Mrs. Maple had called exactly the right shade of autumn. Bramble stirred the soup carefully and smiled to himself. Today was the first harvest morning market of the season. That market was one of Willowbell's coziest traditions. The stalls opened earlier than usual so neighbors could arrive wearing scarves, sip something warm, and share the first good stories of autumn while the grass still sparkled with dew. Bramble had been planning for it all week. He was not the biggest baker in town. He did not have the fanciest cart, and his sign still leaned slightly to the left in a way that Hazel the bunny described as charming but structurally opinionated. Still, Bramble had something he thought might matter more than perfection. He had made breakfast with care. Not too salty, he murmured, tasting one spoonful. Not too plain. Warm enough to cheer up even a grumpy scarecrow. From the path came the familiar thump-thump-thump of Milo the puppy running before breakfast on purpose. Bramble, Milo called. I could smell your soup from 2 gardens away, and I came to help in a calm and dignified manner. The last 4 words were somewhat weakened by the fact that Milo arrived skidding softly through a pile of red leaves. Behind him came Luna the gray kitten, quiet as mist, Pip the duckling with a blue ribbon looped around one wing, and Hazel carrying her notebook, 2 pencils, and the expression of a bunny prepared for any plausible inconvenience. Bramble laughed. Good. I need witnesses in case this soup turns out heroic. Pip rose on his little orange toes to peek into the pot. It already smells heroic. Hazel inspected the basket. Rolls, soup, spoons, cloth napkins, nicely arranged. Where is the sign for the cart? Bramble pointed to the hand-painted board leaning against a pumpkin crate. Harvest morning soup and rolls. Warm breakfast by Bramble. Luna's whiskers twitched with approval. It looks welcoming. Milo sniffed the basket. It looks edible. That too, Bramble said. Together they rolled the cart toward the market green just as the sky turned from soft indigo to pale gold. The willow tree beside the square dropped 3 leaves at once, as if applauding the morning. Mrs. Maple was unlocking the turning page bookshop. Tilly the field mouse was arranging tiny pear tarts on a tray outside her aunt's tea table. Nora the raccoon was carrying 2 folded stools under one arm and a jar of cinnamon pencils under the other. Junie the hedgehog's flower stall, usually bright with asters and marigolds by sunrise, sat empty. Bramble slowed his cart. That was strange. Junie was never late. If anything, Junie usually arrived early enough to greet the dew. She liked flowers at their sleepiest and said they told the truth before noon. Mrs. Maple noticed Bramble looking across the square. She adjusted her green scarf and followed his gaze. Ah, she said gently. You noticed too. Where's Junie? Bramble asked. Mrs. Maple lowered her voice. Her little greenhouse roof leaked in the night. Nothing terrible, only a lot of cold dripping water and several flower trays knocked crooked by wind. She sent word that she might miss market this morning. She sounded embarrassed about it. Hazel's ears tilted. Embarrassed? Why? Because she had promised everyone autumn bouquets for the first market, Mrs. Maple said. And because Junie is the sort of soul who feels she has disappointed the weather whenever rain arrives uninvited. Bramble looked at the empty stall again. He pictured Junie in her little hillside greenhouse, trying to dry seed packets, standing droopy flowers upright, and insisting to herself that no one must fuss. The thought made his chest pull tight. Junie had once stayed up late making tiny herb labels for Bramble's cart because she said soup deserved handwriting that looked hopeful. She had tied thyme sprigs in ribbon for his first market morning. She always noticed when someone needed a flower tucked into a jar just to make a table look less lonely. The market square seemed thinner without her. Milo looked from Bramble to the empty stall and then back again. You're having an idea. Bramble blinked. Am I? You do that face, Luna said. The one where your ears point forward before your words catch up. Bramble rested one paw on the soup basket. I was only thinking. Junie always brings beauty to everyone else's mornings. Maybe someone should bring breakfast to hers. Pip gasped softly, which for him was the sound of immediate devotion. A sunrise soup basket. Hazel had already written it down. Milo's tail began sweeping the cold grass. Yes, yes, definitely yes. We can bring the whole basket, and perhaps also moral support, and if needed, emergency roll distribution. Bramble hesitated. I still need to open the stall. Mrs. Maple set a reassuring paw on the cart handle. Dear Fox, in Willowbell there are mornings when selling breakfast matters. Then there are mornings when delivering it matters more. Nora arrived in time to hear this last sentence. If the soup is traveling, it should not travel alone, she said. A proper kindness delivery needs balance. And lids. That settled it. The friends moved quickly, but not frantically. Hazel made a list titled Sunrise Soup Basket Plan. Luna tucked the rolls into a second cloth so they would stay soft. Pip tied blue ribbon around the basket handle because he believed all brave errands should look a little festive. Milo fetched a little red wagon from behind the bookshop so the pot would not have to be carried the whole way. Nora found sturdy cups with handles and a small jar for flowers. Because, she said, breakfast should never arrive empty of color. Then the whole market joined in. Mrs. Maple contributed 2 cinnamon pears from the bookshop windowsill bowl. Tilly added a packet of sugared oat biscuits for after the soup. If the soup inspires lingering. A squirrel child hurried over with a note that read, "For Junie, from the market," written in very large careful letters. Old Mr. Bell the turtle from the green offered a sprig of lemon balm from his coat pocket. No one asked why it had been in his coat pocket. In Willowbell, useful herbs turned up in all kinds of places. Even the bakery fox from the larger shop across the lane sent over a little round of butter shaped like a leaf and said, "For the rolls." Quietly. Soon the red wagon held more than breakfast. It held the feeling of the square itself. Bramble looked at the wagon and swallowed. "What if she feels embarrassed?" he asked softly. "What if she thinks we are treating her like a problem instead of a friend?" Luna stepped closer. "Then we arrive gently." Hazel nodded. "No crowding. No dramatic speeches. We offer help exactly the way Junie would offer it to someone else." Milo lifted the wagon handle. Warmly. Pip lifted the ribbon basket. Beautifully. Nora adjusted the soup lid. Without spilling. So they set off up Clover Hill. Junie's cottage sat just above the market, where the lane curved beside a stone wall and the pumpkin vines had begun to turn gold at the edges. Her greenhouse stood behind the cottage, half glass, half painted wood, with flower boxes beneath the windows and a rain barrel at the corner. When the friends reached the gate, they could already see that the night had been unkind to the place in small weary ways. One roof panel had slipped crooked. Several seedling trays stood tilted on the potting bench. Damp paper labels curled sadly at the ends. A row of marigolds in terracotta pots leaned together as if sharing concern. Junie herself was kneeling in the doorway with a dish towel in one paw and a bundle of damp twine in the other. At first she did not notice them. Then Milo's wagon wheel tapped a stone, and she looked up. Her round hedgehog face went through 3 expressions very quickly: surprise, relief, and then the worried politeness of someone deciding whether she ought to apologize before saying hello. "Oh," Junie said, "you all came." Bramble stepped forward first, but slowly, the way you would approach a shy bird or a nervous thought. "We brought breakfast," he said, "and only as much help as feels friendly." Junie looked at the wagon. Steam drifted from the soup pot. The flower jar caught the morning light. The note from the market rested on top of the basket, tucked under Pip's blue ribbon. For a moment she said nothing at all. Then her shoulders dropped in the smallest, most exhausted way, and Bramble understood just how hard she had been trying to look cheerful by herself. "I woke up before dawn to save the asters," Junie said. "Then the rosemary tray tipped. Then all my little paper labels got wet. Then I thought if I hurried I might still make it to market. But every time I stood one thing up, 2 other things looked droopier." Milo set the wagon brake with solemn purpose. "That sounds like a rude morning." Junie gave a tiny laugh. "Yes, a very rude morning." Hazel opened her notebook. "Would you like the official plan or the cozy version?" Junie blinked. "There are 2. There are always 2. Hazel said. "The official plan is warm breakfast first, triage second, market decisions third. The cozy version is exactly the same plan but with soup." That made Junie smile for real. So they carried everything to the cottage porch. Nora set the pot on a folded towel. Luna arranged the rolls and pears on a tray. Pip tied the squirrel child's note to the flower jar. Bramble ladled soup into cups while Milo spread the leaf-shaped butter onto a warm roll and nearly looked emotional about it. Junie took the first sip with both paws wrapped around the cup. Everyone waited. She closed her eyes. "Oh," she whispered. "This tastes like someone remembered the morning could still be good." Bramble's ears warmed under his fur. They ate together on the porch while the sun climbed higher. Junie read the note from the market twice. Mrs. Maple's cinnamon pears disappeared quickly. Pip crumbled exactly half a biscuit into his soup before Hazel informed him that this was eccentric but not illegal. Milo offered encouragement to the marigolds, which seemed to appreciate the attention even if they did not visibly improve. By the time breakfast was finished, the whole greenhouse looked less impossible. "Now," said Hazel, clicking her pencil, "we rescue what is rescuable, dry what is dryable, prop what is propable, and simplify today's market expectations." Junie stared. "Did you invent those words just now?" "Possibly," Hazel said. "They are useful words." Everyone found a task. Luna rewrote the smudged plant labels in her neat, quiet handwriting. Nora climbed carefully onto a stool and reset the slip roof panel so the drip stopped tapping onto the herb table. Pip untangled the damp twine and retied bunches of asters with fresh blue ribbon, insisting that emergency bouquets often needed a little ceremony. Milo carried trays into sunlight one by one, walking so carefully that his usual bounce condensed into something like a determined wobble. Bramble stayed beside Junie at the potting bench. Together they sorted stems, pinched off bruised leaves, and set aside the flowers that were still market ready. As they worked, Junie's breathing grew slower. "I feel silly now," she admitted after a while. Nothing was ruined forever. It just all looked ruined at once. Bramble shook his head. "That is not silly. Sometimes a morning becomes too many small problems standing in one doorway." Junie glanced up at him. "Did you make that sentence while stirring soup?" "Possibly," Bramble said. She smiled again. By mid-morning, the greenhouse had changed. The asters stood straight in 3 bright buckets. The rosemary smelled brave instead of soggy. The marigolds no longer looked worried. The labels were dry. The floor was swept. And on the work table sat 6 very pretty mixed bouquets, smaller than Junie had originally planned, but charming in a more personal way. Hazel counted them. 6 good bouquets are better than 12 flustered ones. Pip added a ribbon to each handle, and now they look as if they believe in themselves. Junie looked around the greenhouse with shining eyes. I think I can still come to market." Milo's tail thumped the doorframe. "Excellent. We have already reserved you a place beside the soup." So the friends did something unexpected. Instead of bringing Junie back to a market she had missed, they brought part of the market back with them. Nora helped wheel the flower buckets down the hill. Hazel carried the label cards. Luna balanced the bouquet tray. Pip marched ahead with the note tied to the basket like a tiny banner. Bramble pulled the red wagon, now empty except for the soup pot and one surviving roll. Junie walked in the middle, no longer rushed, her paws warm in borrowed mittens from Mrs. Maple's emergency porch basket. When they turned onto the green, the whole square noticed. The empty flower stall no longer looked lonely. The market had left space for her. Mrs. Maple waved her scarf. Tilly clapped with both paws. The bakery fox pretended to adjust his apron so no one would remark on how pleased he looked. Even old Mr. Bell lifted his lemon balm sprig like a little flag. "Junie's here," cried the squirrel child who had written the note. Junie set her bouquets on the table and laughed in a bright surprised way, as if she had not expected the morning to welcome her back. Bramble poured the last of the soup into 5 small tasting cups. Hazel made a sign that read Sunrise Soup Basket Special. Pip placed the flower jar beside it, and without anyone formally deciding so, the flower stall and Bramble's breakfast cart became neighbors for the rest of the day. Customers came for soup and left with asters. They came for marigolds and stayed for warm rolls. They asked how Junie's greenhouse was doing, and she answered honestly instead of apologetically. They asked Bramble what was in the broth, and he said, mostly vegetables, a little rosemary, and a surprising amount of community. By noon, the market green felt extra golden. Junie sold every bouquet. Bramble sold every roll. Mrs. Maple bought the last cup of soup and declared it suitable for rescuing both weather and mood. When the stalls began folding toward afternoon, Junie handed Bramble a tiny bunch of asters wrapped in wax paper. "For your card," she said. "So tomorrow morning remembers this morning." Bramble accepted them carefully. "Only if you take this." He gave her the checkered basket cloth, washed clean and folded warm from the sun. "For your emergency supply shelf, in case another rude morning arrives." Junie pressed the cloth to her chest and laughed. "Then I suppose I'll need to keep a soup-sized space beside it, just in case," Milo said. That should have been the end of the story, but in Willowbell, kind ideas rarely stayed one-time ideas for long. The next chilly morning, Tilly brought tea to a neighbor whose chimney smoked too sadly. The morning after that, Mrs. Maple left warm oat cakes on Nora's steps when Nora stayed up all night fixing a wobbling bridge rail. Hazel began a page in her notebook titled Sunrise Basket Possibilities. Pip upgraded the ribbon situation immediately, and Bramble, who had only meant to bring breakfast to one friend on one difficult morning, found himself asked a new question whenever the air turned crisp and the town woke a little tender. "Is the sunrise basket out today?" Most mornings, the answer was no. Some mornings, the answer was yes, and those were the mornings everyone seemed to remember longest. Because in Willowbell, help did not have to be grand to change the shape of a day. Sometimes it arrived in a red wagon. Sometimes it came with soup steam curling into cold air. Sometimes it looked like 6 smaller bouquets instead of 12 perfect ones. And sometimes the warmest thing a friend could carry to your porch was the quiet message hidden inside breakfast itself. You do not have to fix the whole morning alone.